The Princess and the Pea, a fairy tale by Hans Christian Andersen and retold by Debbie Croft. Once upon a time, there was a prince. He wanted to marry a princess, but she had to be a real princess. The prince went from one country to the another, looking for a real princess to marry. He tried very hard. He looked everywhere, but he couldn't find one. The prince was sad. He came home again, but he still wanted to marry a real princess. There are lots of princesses, he said to his parents, the king and queen, but I don't know if they are real princesses. Every time I meet one, there is always something about her that is not as it should be. You should marry a real princess, said the queen sharply. The king smiled at the prince and said, I think that a real princess would want to marry a prince like you. That night there was a wild storm. Lightning flashed across the sky and thunder rattled the windows at the palace. Rain was falling heavily. Suddenly, the bell at the palace gate rang loudly. The king rushed out to unlock the gate. To his surprise, he saw a princess standing there. She was shivering in the cold. There was water running off her coat and dripping down into her shoes. Please, may I come inside? The princess asked the king. It's very cold out here. I am wet from the storm. Yes, the king said. Quickly, coming out of the rain. I wonder if this girl is a real princess. The king said to himself. Maybe the queen will know. The king took the princess into the palace and sat her down by the fire, where she would be warm. He looked at the queen, but she didn't say anything. She just smiled. The queen knew how to tell if this girl was a real princess. The queen tiptoed upstairs to her bedroom. She put a tiny pea on the bottom of the bed where the princess was going to sleep that night. Then she lifted 20 thick mattresses and put them carefully on top of the pea. Next, she placed 20 of her best quills on top of the mattresses. Later that night, the princess, who was very tired, went off to bed. Good night, the princess said to the king and the queen, and thank you so much for letting me stay in your lovely palace. The next morning at breakfast, the queen asked the princess how she had slept. Not very well, said the princess sadly. I felt as if I was laying on something very hard, and now my body is black and blue. The queen was very happy to hear this news. No one but a real princess would feel the pea I placed under all those mattresses, she said with a smile. All of a sudden, the rain stopped and the wind blew the storm clouds away. The next year, the prince married the princess, and they lived happily ever after in the palace.